How to practice mindful eating meditation, step by step. 1. Take a moment. When I try mindful eating, I normally like to sit in silence for a moment before starting my meal. I observe my breath, allowing myself to calm down and enter a relaxed state before I take the first mouthful. I find it helpful to minimize distractions. During this moment, I also like to say a silent prayer to express gratitude for the food that I'm about to have. Regardless of our tradition or religion, we can always take a moment to feel grateful and realize how much we depend on grace and on others for our own sustenance. Mealtimes can be used as an opportunity to practice loving kindness, compassion, and equanimity, feeling gratitude towards all the people that have worked to bring our food to our table. From the farmer till the cook, hundreds of people have contributed with their work and effort so that we can have this meal. We couldn't survive on this planet if it wasn't for the kindness of others. Realizing how much we depend on others just to have one meal helps us to be humble and teaches us to cherish others. 2. Move consciously. Whenever I'm ready, I consciously and slowly allow my hands to move to reach for my first bite. Making conscious and slow movements helps to keep the mind in the present moment. We can think of it as a moving meditation or a meditation in action, such as Tai Chi or the traditional Japanese tea ceremony. Every movement is conscious, grateful, and deliberate. Moving slowly can also help us to become a detached witness of our actions. We're able to observe ourselves eating, taking some distance from the act of eating and from any mental or emotional state at this time. If we miss these first 2 steps, as it will most likely happen at the beginning, we can always start our mindful eating practice in the middle of our meal. 3. Put your hands down. As soon as you take the first mouthful, with slow and conscious movements, put down the fork and knife or the spoon that you're using. Then rest your hands on your lap and focus on the food that you're chewing. This is really important. You have to let go of the cutlery and put your hands down. If you keep holding your fork and knife, you will not notice that all of a sudden your hands start reaching for the next bite, even without having finished the food you still have in your mouth. By putting your utensils down and resting your hands on the table or on your lap, you're allowing yourself some time to be fully aware whenever you take your next bite. Putting your utensils down also gives you an opportunity to move mindfully by making every movement graceful and conscious, placing your utensils very carefully on your plate. If you're eating with your hands, you can still just relax your arm down without touching your food. 4. Chew your food thoroughly. When chewing your food, try to focus on chewing your food thoroughly. Remind yourself that the stomach has no teeth. By chewing our food properly, we're helping our digestive system to better assimilate our food and make the best out of it. I know this doesn't have too much with mindful eating, but you might consider chewing many times to help the mind stay present. The point is to take your time to properly chew your food before you swallow it and go for another bite. 5. Take 2 slow breaths. The next step is the most important step in mindful eating. In my experience, this step is what has mainly helped me transform a mundane activity like eating into a truly meditative experience. After you finish chewing your food, And while you keep your arms relaxed with your hands on your lap, take 2 slow breaths. As you inhale, feel your belly slowly expanding. And as you exhale, feel your belly slowly contracting. Don't chew at this moment. Don't do anything at this moment. Simply observe your breath with your arms relaxed and your hands resting on your lap. By observing the movement of your belly, according to the rhythm of your breath, you naturally enter a relaxed state of mind. You need to make sure, though, the breath is relaxed, slow, and effortless. We are combining mindful eating with mindful breathing, and this is very effective as each practice supports the other. It's almost as if half the time you're in a sitting meditation and the other half you are eating consciously. By the way, if you feel that you just can't wait for 2 breaths to take your next mouthful, then I recommend that you take 3 breaths instead. If you feel that almost irresistible urge to go for your next bite, this means you're definitely stressed, and that's exactly what we're trying to deal with. By gently forcing yourself to take another slow and relaxed breath, you give yourself more time to relax and to overcome this anxiety. 6, decide when to move before you move. This next step is another very crucial step. After taking these 2 breaths, before you make any movements, bring your awareness to your arms, knowing that they are about to move. Resist the tendency to let your arms move right away, and instead, consciously decide when to move them. Only then, allow your hands to reach for the fork or spoon before taking your next mouthful. It is actually quite difficult to be aware that you're about to move before you move. Taking those 2 breaths makes the process much easier, since this allows the nervous system to relax, and it also gives you the time to be mindful. 7, move slowly. Once you decide to move, since the movement is under your control, it is easier to move slowly and consciously. You will notice that if you eat like this for a while, there may be a moment when you naturally start moving very slowly and without any effort. Even if you get distracted and your arms move before you decide to move, you will notice that your movements are more graceful. This last step is pretty much the same as the second step. I make an emphasis here, though, because it's much easier to do after you finish chewing your food and after you take those 2 slow breaths. As we mentioned before, even if you forget about mindful eating when you start eating, you can always start in the middle of your meal. You will then naturally start by putting your hands down, watching your breath, and then moving consciously. After the last step, you simply keep repeating the process on and on until you're satisfied. In summary, these few steps of putting the hands down, watching your breath, and consciously deciding when to move next is what, in my experience, truly helps us to stay mindful throughout the meal. It doesn't matter if you forgot to take a moment in the beginning. It doesn't matter if you're already eating in a rush. You can start eating consciously at any step by simply putting the hands down and taking 2 slow breaths. Taking these 2 slow breaths and moving slowly each time will gradually relax your nervous system. If you were feeling anxious or stressed when you sat down to eat, by the time you finish your meal, you will most certainly experience a completely different mental and physical state.